I really like this comment that someone made recently in regard to spiritual prisons, and immediately I begin to think about life from a physical aspect of being in prison personally with my own experiences, and also thinking of some of the strongholds and the spiritual bondage that I was in at one point in my life from a spiritual imprisonment. And so you have those two levels of prison, and I think it's just a blessing that I'm able to sit here and communicate the differences and the similarities between the two. Oftentimes in the church, you hear people who have a heart to do prison ministry, but it's very difficult for them to really transcend those barriers of being in prison physically as well as being in prison to a spiritual or some type of demonic bondage in your life, even if that person is going to be bold enough to say, I have been or I am dealing with this particular spiritual bondage. And I think that's one of the key issues of being a Christian, is really pulling back the veil that often covers our hearts, hindering our testimonies from being seen. And if we can really pull back the covers of our hearts and really expose what we've been through, we can help a lot of people. And in this instance, I can say that I have been bound to pornography. I have been bound to the lusts of the flesh. I have been bound to alcoholism. I have been bound to other drugs, and have understood and experienced the dynamics and the differences of being bound spiritually as well as in prison. And I think as people go out to do prison ministry or minister to people, we have to think of it on that level. When we're talking to someone who has been in prison, what is their experience, or what has their experiences been being bound in a physical prison and being bound in a spiritual prison, and then relate that to ourselves personally, or relate that to yourself. How has life been with you being someone who is a Christian but may be bound or experience some form of binding in the spirit, where you are bound by some form of sin and you want to be delivered from it? Uniquely enough, being bound from a physical aspect of going to a prison, a location in a state, and you're behind bars physically, but yet you experience the salvation of Jesus Christ and he sets you free on the inside. Wow. Because you've got a lot of Christians who are or profess to be free from a salvific perspective, or from a salvation aspect, but yet on the inside they are bound, and they are locked up and they're chained. And I've heard some Christians say that they rather be in a physical prison than experience some of the tortures of their past that keep them bound up, whether or not it's been sexual abuse, or a woman who may have been raped, or maybe some man who was sexually abused as a little boy and is dealing with some type of sexual inconsistencies. And so you've got so many of these issues. Someone who may be bound in alcoholism, someone who have experienced the death of a loved one and is now bound to a particular behavior, or some type of circumstance that they fleshly enjoy being in, but they know that they are bound. And so you now start to see how being in prison does have some similarities to being in a spiritual prison. And I think that is one of the ways that we really can connect to people who have been in prison or who have not been in prison. And I've got a lot of friends who I correspond to in prison and talk to, ones that get out of prison that I talk to. And one of the things that I hear that is common is that when it's said that they have been in prison, a lot of churches or pastors tend to kind of look down on them, and forget the fact that they have been changed, or as a lot of prisoners say, been made brand new. It's like, okay, well, you've been to prison, you're not, whoa, hold on just a minute. You need to sit down, and we need to really watch you. But I think that tends to be done because we can easily judge the external, because the smell of being incarcerated doesn't always leave you in a moment. And I'm going to talk about that a little later. I just kind of threw something out there that people who have been to prison can really understand. But you can have someone sitting in the pew and be bound spiritually, but yet they can come up and testify and read scriptures, sing. I know a lot of pastors who are bound by wounds and hurts from yesterday. And you got a lot of people in the choir who are still bound by certain things and bound in a sexual prison. But we can't see those. So we tend to exalt them, but we tend to deal with others differently, that we can see their sins externally. And one of the reasons why Jesus made the statement that we've got to pull the plank out of our own eye before we can deal with somebody else's problem that may even be a splinter. So I really wanted to kind of just illuminate your understanding and kind of tweak your interest in where we're going with some of these videos, because I want you to think about your own life for just a moment, and think about that sin, or think about that secret that has its hooks in you, or has had its hook in you. Think for a moment. Yeah, that one. Yeah, you know that one. We don't even have to, you know what it is from my side of the camera, but you know in your heart what you struggle with. Is it the way you talk to your husband? Are you somewhat condescending? Are you very argumentative? Do you have bitterness? Are you very resentful to people in the church? We got to really go deep here. Are you very jealous, or do you lust after women who you watch on TV late at night when your wife is sleeping? I don't know what that issue may be for you, but you know, and however small it may be to somebody else, it may be a thorn to you in your flesh. And so let's deal with that. Let's talk about that spiritual prison, and be thankful that you have not experienced the challenges and the dynamics of a physical prison, because you don't have to seek freedom twice. Okay, I'm gonna stop right there. I think that's enough meat to chew on. I want to hear your comments in regard to this video. Remember, I'm going to be posting a video every day. There's a comment, and if not, there's some issues on my heart about being incarcerated. We're going to deal with it, and we're going to go deeper. So, talk to you later. My name's Myron. See ya.